In 1918, the world let out a collective sigh of relief. The Great War, a conflict that had bled a generation dry, was finally over. They called it the War to End All Wars, a brutal, final lesson in the futility of conflict. Or so they thought. The leaders of the victorious nations gathered, promising to build a new world from the ashes of the old, one where something like this could never happen again. But the peace they built? It wasn't a real peace. It was a fragile ceasefire, built on a foundation of vengeance and instability. The men who signed the peace treaty in 1919 didn't secure the future. Instead, what they really did was light a 20-year fuse on a time bomb. A bomb that would explode into an even more devastating conflict, World War II. This is the story of how trying to end all wars, accidentally, and maybe inevitably, created the next one.
The stage for the next war wasn't set on a battlefield. It was set in a palace. In 1919, Allied leaders met at the Palace of Versailles in France to officially end the war and decide the terms of peace for a defeated Germany. The result was the Treaty of Versailles. It was designed to do two things: make Germany pay for the devastation and make sure it could never again become a military threat. But in trying to guarantee security, the victors sowed the seeds of another war. At the treaty's core was the infamous War Guilt Clause. This forced Germany to accept total, sole responsibility for starting the war. For Germans, who largely believed they had fought a defensive war, this was a deep national humiliation. It was a moral condemnation that branded their nation the sole aggressor, a story that was bitterly resented across German society. But this wasn't just an insult. It was the legal justification for the crushing financial penalties that would follow. The treaty itself said Germany had to pay reparations, but it didn't name a price. That came in 1921, when the final bill was set at a staggering 132 billion gold marks, the equivalent of well over $500 billion today. To most Germans, the number was just impossible. Signing the treaty felt like signing a blank check for their own economic ruin. And the punishments didn't stop there. The treaty dismantled Germany's military. Its army was cut to just 100,000 men, barely enough to keep order at home. Its navy was gutted, and it was forbidden from having an air force, tanks, or submarines. Huge chunks of territory were stripped away. The valuable territories of Alsace-Lorraine were returned to France. The coal-rich Saarland was placed under international administration, with its coal profits going to France. Other lands were given to Belgium, Czechoslovakia, and the new nation of Poland. All told, Germany lost 13% of its land and 10% of its people. For Germans, this wasn't a negotiation. It was a diktat, a dictated peace, forced on them without any discussion. That feeling of injustice would fester for years, creating fertile ground for radical ideas that promised to restore Germany's honor. The consequences of the treaty hit Germany immediately, and they were catastrophic. The new German government, the Weimar Republic, was saddled with this impossible debt right from the start. To try and make the crushing reparation payments, the government did the only thing it could. It started printing more money. A lot more money. This, combined with the loss of industrial land and the post-war economic slump, triggered a total financial meltdown. By 1923, this spiraled into one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in history. The German mark became worthless. Prices for everyday goods shot up, sometimes doubling in a matter of hours. A loaf of bread that cost a few marks in the morning could cost thousands by the afternoon. People's life savings, built up over generations, were wiped out overnight. You hear stories of people papering their walls with banknotes or burning them for heat because the money was literally cheaper than firewood. The economic chaos fueled political instability. When Germany inevitably fell behind on its payments, French and Belgian troops marched in and occupied the Ruhr, Germany's actual industrial heartland, to take resources like coal as payment. The German government urged workers to resist by going on strike and printed even more money to support them, which just threw gasoline on the hyperinflation fire. Society began to break down, with riots and looting as desperate people struggled just to eat. This environment of despair and humiliation was the perfect breeding ground for extremism. The fragile democracy was blamed for everything, for accepting the treaty, for the humiliation, and for the economic ruin. Germans who had lost everything were angry, scared, and desperate for a savior. They were looking for someone, anyone, who would defy the world, restore their pride, and offer a simple way out of their suffering. They didn't have to wait long. Rising from the chaos and resentment of post-war Germany was a new political force, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. And their leader was a charismatic, fanatical former soldier named Adolf Hitler. Hitler was a master propagandist who tapped into the anger and shame of the German people because he felt it himself. His message was brutally simple and effective. Germany hadn't really been defeated on the battlefield. It had been stabbed in the back by corrupt politicians, communists, and Jews back home. The Treaty of Versailles was a national disgrace, and he swore he would tear it up. He gave Germans a powerful new story that replaced their shame with righteous anger. He told them they weren't villains, they were victims of a global conspiracy. He promised to rebuild Germany's strength, take back its lost lands, and unite all German-speaking peoples into a single dominant empire, a Reich. For a nation on its knees, this was a powerful message. But it was the Great Depression in 1929 that truly launched the Nazis from a fringe group into a mass movement. The global crash, which started in the US, hit Germany especially hard. American loans that had helped stabilize the economy dried up. Businesses collapsed, and unemployment skyrocketed again. By 1932, it peaked at over 6 million people, roughly 30% of the entire German workforce. This new wave of misery made the democratic government look completely powerless. Desperate and fed up, millions of Germans abandoned mainstream parties and turned to extremists. Hitler and the Nazis exploited the fear, blaming Jews and communists for the crisis. They promised work, bread, and national greatness. In an atmosphere of political paralysis and street violence, Hitler presented himself as the strong leader Germany needed to save it. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. The 20-year fuse lit back at Versailles had just reached a powder keg. The man who promised to avenge Germany's humiliation was now in power, and he had a very clear, aggressive plan. Once in power, Hitler didn't waste a second. His main goals were to tear apart the Treaty of Versailles, rearm Germany, and expand its territory. He started to openly defy the treaty, step by step, testing the resolve of the former allies. In 1935, he announced that Germany was rearming with a military draft and a new air force, the Luftwaffe, both directly banned by the treaty. The world protested, but did nothing. A year later, in March 1936, he took an even bigger gamble. He marched troops into the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone on the French border. Again, Britain and France just offered verbal complaints. So why the inaction? Well, the policy of the day, especially in Britain, was appeasement, basically giving an aggressor what they want to avoid a fight. There were a few reasons for this. The memory of World War I was still a raw, open wound, and nobody wanted another war. On top of that, many British politicians felt a bit guilty, believing the treaty had been too harsh on Germany. Britain was also militarily unprepared for a major war, so they appeased. In March 1938, Hitler annexed Austria, another direct violation of the treaty. The world watched. Later that year, he set his sights on the Sudetenland, a part of Czechoslovakia with a large German-speaking population. This led to the infamous Munich Agreement, where the leaders of Britain and France met with Hitler and simply gave him what he wanted, without even consulting the Czechs. The British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, flew back to Britain, famously declaring he had secured peace for our time. But appeasement didn't calm Hitler down.
It emboldened him. Every time they gave in, it just proved to him that the Western democracies were weak and unwilling to fight. Just 6 months after promising he had no more territorial ambitions, Hitler broke his promise and invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia in March 1939. It was the final straw. Appeasement hadn't worked. It had failed spectacularly. It was chillingly clear that Hitler's ambitions went far beyond just reversing the Treaty of Versailles. Realizing war was now unavoidable, Britain and France finally dropped the policy and promised to defend Poland.
2 days later, Britain and France kept their promise and declared war on Germany. The 20-year fuse had finally burned to the end. World War II had begun. Looking back, the line from the end of one war to the beginning of the next is tragically clear. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to secure peace, instead created a legacy of humiliation that destabilized Germany from day one. The economic devastation it caused, first with hyperinflation and then made worse by the Great Depression, created the perfect storm for a demagogue like Hitler to rise. And appeasement, the policy designed to prevent war, just convinced the aggressor he had a green light. World War I was meant to be the war to end all wars. But its ending was really just a 20-year ceasefire. The unresolved problems, the punishing terms, and the economic ruin didn't create a lasting peace. They just set the stage for a new conflict, one that would be fought by the children of the men who fought the first. It remains one of history's most brutal lessons. A peace built on revenge isn't peace at all. It's just the blueprint for the next war. This chain of events is one of the most important and cautionary tales in all of history. If you find these pivotal moments that shaped our world as fascinating as we do, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. And let us know in the comments which historical event you'd like to see us explore next. Thanks for watching.